one of the things that's changed over the last 6 months, like Anita said. We realized that part of where that whole process erred was that silo, operating in that silo, so that's changed. I want to go back and talk a little about, we're not talking about, other than what you see in the ordinance, in the conversations I've been in, we don't have any other changes that are on the table, on the board. All the way down to budget as far as we know right now. Priorities and work plan, those are all to come because the office it has is going to need to develop its own work plan when the people are there. And we're getting ready to take some time to do that too. I think because of who we are and what we do, we could in 5 minutes talk about easily, and I'm not suggesting we do now, but we know what the priorities of a group like this are. They stare us in the face every single day. So it's not difficult for us to understand that the work we do is probably aligned with the work of the folks who are supporting these other initiatives. It's not hard to imagine that our work plan will be very much aligned with what else is going on. That conversation will not be significantly different. And same thing with the other issues with staff and resources. I do believe in this configuration that we will have access to more resources. It was interesting as I prepared to go through this process, I read through the document that we often hold, that framework of action. One of the things that occurred to me was that that framework for action didn't anticipate a time when the city would commit to expanding the resources dedicated to the kind of work we do. It was developed at a time when there was no Human Rights Commission, if you remember. That it was lifting up to say, we need to do this work. Where we are now is, we're asking for additional resources and providing for additional resources. I think it's a slightly different place where we are. And I think it puts us in a slightly different position. I think there was a point in this process where we were fighting for our lives, but that was a different issue. I don't think that that's what's going on in the reconfiguration of this ordinance.
If you look on page 6 on the back, which is the Human Rights Commission, in the Office of Human Relations Code is separate from the Human Rights Commission Code. The only changes that we're making in the Human Rights Commission Code is to change the name of the staff and the direction of the staff, and this commission shall be staffed by the Office of Equity and Human Rights. It says right at the beginning, and that speaks to what you just said, Alan, the previous ordinance was setting things up. So your code says there is hereby created. We don't need to say that now. It is created. You are. And then cleaning up the nomination process. The current code didn't say what happens. It said what happens when there's an interim vacancy, but didn't say what happens when somebody's term is up. So we've just said that the same process that you've used, which Tricia, I know that you're going to be stepping down soon. I really want to acknowledge your great work on the nominating committee, and the new commissioners are evidence of that.
Here.
So we want to just continue that and make sure that it's in the code. I will add something about members are encouraged to establish relationships, constructive relationships with each member of council, or something like that in this. The only other change that we're making is that in addition to being guided by the principles of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, we added at the bottom and the Portland Plan Equity Initiative.
Madam Chair, I apologize I have to get across town, but I wanted to just again, ideas. If you spend time around me, I've got lots of ideas. Some are really bad, some are okay. But Commissioner Maxey's, part of your concern was, what about folks that are feeling discriminated against or treated unfairly? That was part of what you said, and we've had an initial conversation with Bureau of Labor and Industries, who actually has the responsibility on our behalf to do that kind of work if they ever work with local groups such as this. And Commissioner Avakian said, yeah, we've created a statewide group that has a slice of your responsibilities, and they are very interested in having, and they said they have relationships with other like or similar groups around the state, and they very much like to work with this group so that you could be advising them and looking for trends. And not only potential, I don't know if it could be on individual cases, or it could be, but we would benefit if you see trends, and you would be able to give advice to the person actually responsible for a lot of this stuff, because we're not. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to explore growing your accountability and your influence not only with city government, but with all of our Portland Plan partners, which include the state.
I wanted to make a quick comment before you go, and I was, there is a God, because I was thinking about you before I came to the meeting. I got a phone call today from a reporter from the AtlanticMagazine.com and discussing the issue, the Portland bike issue, Williams Avenue, in which I am the Antichrist. I hope I've come out of that role. But I just thought that Portland is on the national scope. And how we handle that Williams Avenue situation is on the national scope, which means if it's in the Atlantic, it's going international. And I think that the eye is gonna be looking at the Office of Equity at the same time. So, just so we know that everybody's watching.
And if I could, one last, I enjoy the dialogue, is I hope the nation's watching here at what we're doing here, because when this city puts its, when it exercises the discipline to get to know something deeply, when it puts together a smart plan that is accountable, that you can't pretend something did or didn't happen, either did happen or didn't happen. The city time and time again has made progress. Where we haven't invested that kind of effort is in the issues that are your mission. So I look forward to my waning swan song to bring my best thinking with others and come up with something that achieves. I'm very blunt. I said, we lead the nation. I talk about we lead the nation in residential recycling. And yet equity and human rights is so much more important.
A lot harder to do.
Yeah, and that's why I don't mind the spotlight of the nation on us, because we've taken on.
Call her back and tell her.
Yeah, that we've taken on impossible issues before. I'm convinced Portlanders are good-hearted people, by and large. They just haven't had an opportunity, we haven't had an opportunity to act on that. So I really appreciate you letting me talk so much, Madam Chair.
Thank you for having
You
me.
bet. And I look forward to your thoughts and hopefully working with you.
Thank you very much.
You bet. Take care. Thank you.
Still continuing conversation with Judge Pickett? I am mindful that we skipped public testimony as well 45 minutes ago. So can we take Damon's comment and then move? We have two people signed up for public comment.
I just wanted to point out to Emily, when you addressed the issue of staffing earlier, that technically in previous ordinance, only the director was assigned to us, and that this is actually expansion of who we have access to. And under the new language, the commission shall be staffed by the Office of Equity and Human Rights. Although we have our senior staff person, we will have access to all staff.
Well, that was exactly my question. I mean,
Okay.
it's not super clear. I understand that you interpret that from seeing this. I guess, I don't know that we need an ordinance to tell us this, but somehow we need some assurance.
From my understanding, that's what this new language is supposed to do, where we actually did not technically have access to all staff previously.
According to the ordinance we did.
When you have a constructive partnership, and I do model it on the Planning and Sustainability Commission, which I was on the Planning Commission for 7 years, nobody would have thought of getting rid of the Planning Commission. And it got staff from transportation and parks, environmental services. Basically, we said, come and present to us the director of planning and the staff person assigned to the commission. Absolutely, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, we're gonna do that. So that's what Damon says, and Alan notes, that it's really expanding your options.
I hope it is. I think that would be great.
Okay. Public comment, we have Michael Moe.
Mayo.
Mayo, sorry.
Well, okay.
You thought it was just roll call.
I am here as a person who has attended a few of your previous meetings, and I am going to characterize what you're asked to do in broad and philosophic terms. That is, I think you are being asked to commit bureaucratic suicide. It doesn't matter what your vote here tonight is. The city council decides whether or not to do what it's going to do. And it is here to ask you to say, yeah, it's okay to add the Human Rights Commission into the Office of Equity. The Human Rights Commission, which I have watched, as I say, for a few months, so I'm not exactly someone who can just rattle off one thing after another, has had an opinion on how the homeless are being treated by Sit-Lie. It has had an opinion on the Joint Terrorism Task Force. It is addressing the racial profiling in our city. And as a result, the mayor comes to the Human Rights Commission and says to it, oh, we're not living in paradise. It must be your fault. Let's put another bureaucratic layer on top of it. That is very similar to me as a school teacher, what they do with the fact that some kids don't succeed in school. They come in and they say, let's fix all of the social and economic problems of our society here in school. And all we're going to have to do is reorganize everything from top to bottom, more or less every year for the rest of your career. That is a cover. You're doing fine work. Keep at it. Keep putting a burr under the saddle of the city council in this city and vote down this whole thing.
Dan?
I'm Dan Handelman with Portland Cop Watch, and I'm glad to see that there's some possible resolution to the possible future of the Human Rights Commission by adding it into the Equity Office. I share some of Michael's concerns that you are going to be subsumed into it and become less important than you are now. I particularly don't know that I agree that some of the language in here is as clear. We've already heard one of your commissioners say it's not that clear you're going to have access to all the staff. I've seen so many of these ordinances, just write it clearly. They will have access to all the staff. If it's written down, then it's clear, right? So I think that if you give a nod to this tonight, you should give a nod to it, a tentative nod to it, and look for what the final language looks like on the 21st when it comes back to council. And hopefully you're still involved in these high-level discussions about what that language is going to look like. I'm concerned that the language that does exist in the existing ordinance, I'm sorry that Mayor Adams isn't here to hear these comments, that explicitly states that members of your commission get to discuss the hiring of, the staffing of the Office of Human Relations, that language is being removed. The only language about you talking about staff is now in the background ordinance part, but it's no longer in the city code part. So I would hope that gets reinserted in some way. I agree also that the question about your positions on Sit-Lie and the Joint Terrorism Task Force are not the same positions that the city attorney took on those issues. And so city council actually took the positions of the city attorney in those cases. So there may, and this is the charter commission question that I've been raising with them, maybe there should be more of a provision for you to consult with an external attorney if you need to, so that the city attorney's opinion, which is protecting the city from lawsuits and whatnot, is may not necessarily be what's best for human rights. And again, that provision about talking to the city attorney is in the ordinance, but it's not in the city code. So maybe something needs to be added to the city code. I'd be curious to hear why Commissioner Fish's name hasn't come up in the discussion so far. I've heard every other commissioner's name. I'm sure there's a reason for it. I also agree with a comment that was made that there is a provision for the Human Rights Commission to report to all of City Council. I'm unclear about this document of the existing ordinance because I went and looked online today, and these little sub-numbers that numbers C through I, which have a line under it, which seems that maybe they were cut and pasted, those aren't online as part of the ordinance. I mean, as part of the city code, let's be clear. I think they were part of the ordinance, but I don't think they're in city code this way. So, again, I do think it was the legislative intent for you to report to all of City Council. I think that the way this is written now, the commissioner in charge helps you nominate new members, whereas it used to be your director that helped you nominate new members. And it seems, if you want to involve all of City Council, let all of City Council nominate your members. Maybe there's 15 people, maybe each council member gets to nominate 3. I don't know, just an idea. I think those are my comments at this point. If there's more stuff later, I'm hoping you might open up some more city public comment if there's time at the end. Appreciate that.